Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started here today. Eliav, are you on the call?
I am. Hello.
Hello, would you like to lead us off?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to lead us off. I'm seeing that a lot of people are still joining. I'm hearing the pinging of participants growing. So we are at 100 participants, but why don't we begin? So good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Eliav Sharvit. I'm the CEO of Legacy Health Services. And I see that there is a very diverse audience here. I want to thank everybody for joining us for this very important town hall. To the extent that you are a caregiver, let me take this opportunity to thank you for your continued efforts on the front lines on behalf of those that are entrusted to our care. That's why we are having this town hall to begin with. I also want to take a moment to thank all of our distinguished panelists for taking the time to join us and to share with us some valuable knowledge from their unique perspective, their expert perspective in their field. Before we begin, let me introduce also Christine Martin. Christine will act as our moderator for the panel. Christine's our marketing and communications director and has really put together this town hall. So I want to take a moment to thank her for putting this together. Thank you, Christine. Christine will also share some informational disclaimers with all of you. So please take note of that. And without further delay, let's begin our town hall. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Eliav. I appreciate that introduction. As he shared, we are very excited to hear from our group of panelists today. We're going to be sharing some important information about the development and the safety of the COVID-19 vaccine. Please note that this town hall is intended to provide general information about the vaccine. If you have any specific questions about your ability to get the vaccine, please consult with your primary care physician or medical professional. So to our panelists, thank you again so much for joining us today with your wisdom and knowledge. We're very excited to hear from all of you. To start, if we could go through and have you each introduce yourselves for the group here, and we'll go ahead and start with Dr. Balaji.
Good morning, everybody, and thank everybody on the call for being here. It's a very important informational meeting that we are at, and that's going to help our patient population, our families, and ourselves too. And I'm Dr. Balaji. I've been in practice for like 20 years on the east side of Cleveland. And I can proudly tell you, I got my first shot and I'm due to get my second shot of vaccination tomorrow. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Dr. Balaji, for being here. Dr. Lash, are you on the call here with us? Would you like to introduce yourself? Awesome.
I am a medical director over at Parkside, and I've been in practice for 33 years this year. I will be getting my second injection shortly after this program is finished today. But hopefully we can pass on some information on what is and what isn't true that people may have heard about this vaccine, and encourage people that this is really an extremely important thing for us to engage in.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Lash. Definitely agree with that. Dr. Wienerman, would you like to go next?
Hi, everybody, and I'm very excited to be here today to talk to you about the vaccine. I am an assistant professor at University Hospitals here in Cleveland. I'm also a specialist in reproductive endocrinology and infertility. I've been in practice here in Cleveland for about 6 years. I did receive my first vaccine at the very end of December, and I'll be getting my second dose at the end of January.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Wienerman. Kaylee Melman, would you like to introduce yourself next? And Kaylee, you're on mute. If you could just unmute, please.
I just got that alert. You'd think I'd know the drill by now. Hi, everyone. My name's Kaylee. I am the consultant pharmacist for Legacy Health Services. I have been in long-term care for 10 years and working with Legacy for 6. I am also board certified in geriatrics. So I have received both of my immunizations and am ready to re-enter the world on Saturday. I'm very excited to say. So looking forward to this town hall.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Kaylee. And Jennifer, would you like to introduce yourself for the group?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Sines. I'm a nurse practitioner. I'm a geriatric adult nurse practitioner. I've been practicing since 2007. So think that's like 14 years. And I've been with Stafford for a couple of years myself, and I work at Pleasant Lake Villa. And I'll have to say that I have proudly received both injections of the vaccine, and I feel fine.
Awesome. That's great news. Thanks so much, Jennifer. And Jennifer, actually, the first question we have is for you. I've heard that COVID-19 only severely impacts the elderly or people who have other illnesses. Can COVID-19 impact young, healthy individuals?
That's a very good question, and it absolutely can. What the data that we're hearing from now is that 1 in 5, or approximately 20% of young adults or young people who do get COVID do require hospitalization. So we often hear that it's the young that are asymptomatic, but 20% or 1 in 5 can actually be hospitalized. And what we do know is that COVID can also cause lots of long-term effects, which can include regardless of age. So it can affect your heart, it can affect your kidneys, you can be chronically tired, fatigued. It can cause strokes and seizures, chronic pain, chest pains, insomnia, can cause long-lasting depression, anxiety, hair loss, chronic rashes, a lot of sleep problems. And what I can tell you is I've been working with COVID at least since May, since we opened the COVID unit at Pleasant View, and I was helping at Broadview. And I can tell you that one of my very first patients that really just, it rocked me really hard, was younger than me. And I saw that he was in his 30s, and I walk into the room and he is wearing a Star Wars t-shirt, and I can hear his phone going off, and it's Star Wars ringtone. And I'm really realizing this man is very young. And when I look at what his initial diagnosis and what happened was, his first and his only symptom was a stroke. So a man in his 30s who provided for his family, was the sole provider for his family, 3 children, his wife, his mother, his elderly mother lived with him, and his first and only symptom was a stroke, a debilitating stroke, that he will no longer be able to walk again without assistance. He will no longer be able to provide for his family as a functioning adult, and he'll need assistance for the rest of his life, and his family will forever be impacted. And at that time, his mother was actually in the hospital with coronavirus as well, and in the ICU and on the ventilator. And, you know, so this disease definitely affects younger people, and it can be devastating. And oftentimes, since we're in long-term care, we hear about older adults, but definitely young people can be impacted. And certainly young people can be spreaders to the elderly, which is who we see in our work every day.
Wow, what a heartbreaking story. Thanks for sharing that, Jennifer. Definitely amazing. Kaylee, our next question is for you, related to the vaccine approval. Can you tell us, how did the vaccine get approved so quickly?
Absolutely. If you want to go to the next slide, perfect. So I know that it seems to all of us that this vaccine was approved very quickly. But all of the steps that are normally involved in clinical trials were involved here. So for those of us that don't know exactly how clinical trials work, I put this infographic up on the screen for you. And I'm not going to belabor you by going through every single step, but what I do think is important is that we look at the number of people and the phases, and at what point the emergency use authorization was granted. So typically how this works in phase 1 is we have a small number of people. Once safety is established, safety is our first priority. Once safety is established, we move to phase 2, which is a little bit more people. And then once we know that we're safe and effective, then we go to phase 3. So phase 3 typically involves 1,000 to 3,000 people. And this is any new drug that comes to market, any name brand medication that the FDA would review, is typically done in 1,000 to 3,000 people. What's so extraordinary about this vaccine is the phase 3 was done in 44,000 people with the Pfizer vaccine. So that is more than 10 times the amount of people we typically have in any drug that's brought to market. So, and that's exactly what happened with this Pfizer vaccine. We did phase 1, we did phase 2, we did phase 3. And that's the normal point that the FDA would review the phase 3 data and, review it for safety, review it for efficacy, and compare it to the standard of care. So with our Pfizer vaccine, we are reviewing it exactly where we would normally review it at. And as you can imagine, the reason it seems so fast is because this process was expedited because we're in an emergency period. So normally there's a huge backlog of new drug applications on the FDA's desk. And what happened with our COVID vaccines is they were just moved to the front of the line. So the FDA has reviewed everything. They know that it's safe. They know that it's effective. It was studied in lots and lots more people than it's normally studied in. And they said it was both safe and effective to use. What's also remarkable is that their threshold was a 50% efficacy rate, and our vaccines have 94 to 95% efficacy. So it's way more efficacious than was even our bottom line threshold. Something else to help us feel a little bit better is that the technology that Dr. Lash is going to talk about next with the mRNA is not new technology. It's an mRNA technology, and it's been around for 20 or so years. It's been used to help develop vaccines for things like flu and Zika and rabies. It's not just this coronavirus vaccine, and it's not brand new technology. So, what we'll be doing also is as the general population continues to get the vaccine, is all of these adverse effects data are continuing to be collected. They'll be collected for 2+ years. And if any sort of anomalies sort of surface with mass immunization, those will be taken into consideration by the FDA and appropriate safety concerns will be issued.
Awesome. I think that's great information, Kaylee. Thanks so much for sharing that. And that does lead right into our next question, which is for you, Dr. Lash. How does the mRNA vaccine work, and will it change my DNA?
Okay. Well, I'm going to digress a little bit to the history, which Kaylee touched on a little bit. Messenger RNA technology research first began actually a good 30 years ago in 1990. It has been an active area of research ever since then. The reason we don't have other vaccines done with this technology is that the illnesses that were being looked at did not have the same urgent requirement to pass through. Things like polio, we already have a good vaccine with. Zika is not as widespread an issue. But normally when a vaccine is formed, in the laboratory, they try to produce the protein that's found on the outside of a virus, which then is injected into people so that their immune system can recognize this protein when it comes up again, and they can mount a very effective attack against the virus. The problem is it is cumbersome to make these proteins in the laboratory. Messenger RNA is a much easier thing to produce in large quantities. And what messenger RNA provides us is it really is a messenger system. It is the manner that our bodies, that our cells normally use for the DNA, which is in the nucleus of the cell, the middle of the cell, to send signals to other parts of the cell to tell different aspects of the cell to make certain types of proteins. We're using this factor to tell the cells to make the protein that we would otherwise be producing in the laboratory. Messenger RNA never goes into the nucleus. It is never found in the nucleus or anywhere near the DNA. It is broken down by the body within a couple of days, so it doesn't hang around very long. This makes it very efficient as far as our bodies getting rid of it. It does not interact with the DNA, so there's no concern about this somehow interfering or affecting the genetic code that normally exists in our bodies. We're simply using that aspect of messenger RNA to cause our bodies to produce the proteins that we would normally be trying to produce in the laboratory. And this allows us to scale up production very quickly and have it available for the hundreds of millions of people who need these vaccines worldwide. So that's really what we're after and why this new technology came on. This is what has allowed things to move as quickly as they had. If we are using older technology for vaccine production, we would not be anywhere near to the point where we could distribute this to the population.
That's great. That's really helpful information, and how awesome that they have been studying this for so many years and were able to mobilize it so quickly in the fight against COVID-19. That's great. Next, we're going to turn to some questions that have been on the minds of many. And Dr. Wienerman, the first of these questions is for you with your background. Can the vaccine impact a woman's fertility?
Hi, thank you for that question. I think this is a very important topic and a question I'm sure a lot of people have. The short answer is no. The COVID vaccine does not cause infertility. As a fertility doctor, my number one job is to help people get pregnant. That's what I do every day. I am recommending the vaccine to all of my patients who are trying to get pregnant, even those who are undergoing fertility treatments. This is in keeping with the advice from our national OBGYN societies, who are also recommending the vaccine for women who are trying to get pregnant. The reason for this is that the way the vaccine works is that it helps the body make antibodies, which are cells that help the body fight the virus. Antibodies help the body fight all kinds of viruses, like chickenpox, the flu, or even the common cold. The antibodies that are made after the COVID vaccine are not different. These antibodies have no impact on your ability to get or stay pregnant. We can also look to women who have gotten COVID itself. Their bodies naturally make these antibodies, and they are able to get pregnant even after having COVID. There are also women who have gotten the COVID vaccine and got pregnant as part of the vaccine trials. These women got pregnant shortly after getting the vaccine, and we have not seen any problems with their pregnancies to date. So based on how the vaccine works, and also based on what we have seen with the vaccine so far, there is no effect on fertility or your ability to get pregnant from the vaccine. Again, I'm a fertility doctor. I work every day with women and couples who are trying to get pregnant. I'm recommending the vaccine for my patients because we have no evidence of any effect of the vaccine on fertility.
That's great, really great information. Thank you for sharing that. As a follow-up question, if I am pregnant or thinking about getting pregnant or perhaps currently breastfeeding, can I get the vaccine?
That's also an excellent question. So, it's interesting. The vaccine was not directly studied in pregnant or breastfeeding women, but we have a lot of information about the vaccine that we can use as a guide for women who are either pregnant or breastfeeding or planning families. This has also served as the basis for the national guidelines that have been written by the American College of OBGYNs and other national societies. So let's take each population separately. So if you're trying to become pregnant or thinking about becoming pregnant in the near future, it is recommended that you get vaccinated now to prevent COVID infection before you get pregnant. So as we talked about, there is no negative effect of the vaccine on fertility. So it is best to begin your pregnancy already protected by the vaccine against COVID. This will help you have the safest pregnancy possible. So that's why we recommend that you get vaccinated if you can before you get pregnant. If you are pregnant or breastfeeding, it is your choice whether to get the vaccine now or wait. This is something I would recommend discussing with your doctor if you have questions. Many pregnant women have chosen to get vaccinated, and the recommendation is not to withhold the vaccine from pregnant women who want to get vaccinated. This is because we believe the vaccine is likely safe in pregnancy based on how the vaccine works. Now, there are some vaccines that we don't think are safe in pregnancy, such as the measles or chickenpox vaccines. These are called live virus vaccines. The COVID vaccine is not a live virus vaccine. You just heard from Dr. Lash, it's called an mRNA vaccine. So because of this, we think it should be safe for mom and baby in pregnancy. Also, we know that women who get COVID while pregnant are at increased risk of getting more severe complications from COVID than women who are not pregnant. So because of this, many women will choose to get the vaccine while pregnant so that they can have less of a chance of having complications from COVID itself while they're pregnant. But again, if you are pregnant, this is something that I would recommend talking to your doctor about to see if the vaccine is right for you. If you want to get the vaccine while pregnant, it should be offered to you, and we believe that it is safe. If you are trying to get pregnant, I would recommend getting vaccinated now. If you are breastfeeding, we also believe it is safe for you to get the vaccine, and it does not seem to be any risk to your baby, and there may be some benefit of the antibodies to be passed on to your baby as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for all of those details, Dr. Wienerman. I think that it's on the minds of many, so we really appreciate those explanations. Our next question is for Jennifer. Jennifer, the question is, what has been done to ensure the vaccine is safe and effective for everyone, including communities of color?
That's a really good question. And it's one very close to my heart because I'm a person of color myself. And we've all seen and witnessed the devastating effects this virus has had on people of color and their communities. What I will tell you is in the studies itself, the participants, there were 26% were Latino, 10% were African American, and 4.5% were Asian, and 3% included other minorities. So there was some representation during the studies, the people who were enrolled in the vaccine studies. So there is some generalizability to these people of color. What I will tell you is I'm sure that we have seen some of these effects, and just the plain numbers, the case rates for African Americans to develop COVID is 1.4 times higher than Caucasians. For Hispanics, the case rate is 1.7 times higher, and Asians is 0.6 times higher than Caucasians. The hospitalization rates are much higher. So for African Americans and Hispanic Latino, it's 3.7 or almost 4 times higher than Caucasian people, for people of color to be require hospitalization. And the big number here is the death rate for both Hispanic and Latino. The death rate is nearly 3 times higher for them than it is for Caucasian people. And the reason why I mention this is because a lot of our workers are diverse, and there are many people of color who do work for this company. And I really want to reiterate that it is safe because they have studied this vaccine, and it is really important because we need to be leaders in our community. So any of you who are at home and they know that you work in the health field, they actually your people come to you, family members, people in the community who know you, they know you work in healthcare and you are a leader to them. And it's very important that we provide the correct leadership to help continue to keep our own community safe. So even in dovetailing in that, with all the social justice issues that have come to light with Black Lives Matter, taking this vaccine is a way to ensure that you are protecting life, that you are protecting your community's lives. Because if we can prevent this vaccine from mutating, from spreading to devastating these communities, we're going to be protecting our community itself. And that we as healthcare leaders, no matter what your job is in healthcare, from environmental services on up, we are leaders in our communities, and we need to show that this vaccine is safe, and we need to protect ourselves. So there has been studies showing that this vaccine is safe for people of color. And that is very important that we keep our community safe and healthy. And this is our strongest weapon right now, is to vaccinate.
Yep, that's so true, Jennifer. Excellent points on that. Thank you so much for sharing. Dr. Balaji, the next question is for you. Is there anyone who should not get vaccinated? And as a follow-up to that, why are healthcare employees supposed to get it first before the rest of the population?
Sure. Very good questions. Actually, there is no contraindication for this vaccine unless somebody's allergic to it. And there have been instances where a couple of people initially, when it was delivered in England, had allergic reactions. And from that, CDC has given guidelines saying anybody who has multiple allergies or a allergic state that they get allergies to multiple agents should be cautious, taking this vaccine. But truly, there's no contraindication for this vaccine use. Since the time it was started to be delivered in the United States, I just looked up data. There were about 1.8 million vaccines that have been given out. There were only 21 people who had any kind of allergies. And those also have had very good outcomes. So essentially, that boils down to about 11 people in a million, who may have an allergic response, but even they have done very well. They should not go for a second vaccine. Those 11 people in a million should not go for the second dose because they were allergic to the first one. But otherwise, it's a very safe vaccine, no contraindications at all. To the second part of that question, why were healthcare providers, ahead of everybody else in the line? CDC had looked through this problem because there were limited supplies available. And it was prudent for them to decide that the healthcare workers should get it, because we are in the front line. And amongst all the healthcare workers, people in nursing homes are right in the front. So the first phase has 1A, 1B, and 1C. 1A is healthcare workers and long-term care residents. So we are the first ones in the line. And if we don't get it now, if we don't get it in these three, clinics that we are holding, all healthcare workers have to wait until the general population gets it. Who knows when that would be? It might be March, April, we are not sure. So it is paramount that we all get it in this first round. And we should be thankful to the higher ups on the CDC that they have prioritized us to get this vaccine.
Absolutely. I think those are great points, Dr. Balaji. This is certainly an excellent way for us to protect our residents and those we care for. Kaylee, as a follow-up question to one of Dr. Balaji's comments, I have a history of allergies. So what else is in the vaccine, and how might those things impact me and my allergies?
Absolutely. This is a great question. So what Dr. Balaji had mentioned about, there being no contraindications, but you really do need to know, your personal allergy history. The recommendation there is just if you know your very specific allergies, to use this with caution. However, this doesn't refer to our typical everyday allergies that we think of, like pollen or cats or dogs or things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the list of all the ingredients in the vaccine I'll try not to get too technical, not to put you to sleep. But what I'm going to tell you also is some of the common products that we use every day that these ingredients are also in. I think it's really important too that we know what's not in the vaccine. So things we typically think about that we might be concerned about that are in vaccines are things like eggs. We know this is, certain types of flu formulations are made with eggs. There's no eggs in the COVID vaccines. There's no gelatin in the COVID vaccines. There's no latex, and there's no thimerosal. So thimerosal is that preservative that way back in the day, everyone kind of had some caution about, but there's no, which has since been disproven. However, there's not even any thimerosal in this vaccine. So what exactly is in it? And the answer is it has that mRNA, which Dr. Lash talked about. And we know that mRNA is something that's in our bodies working right now to generate protein. This is just an outside coded mRNA that's coming in to help us make special COVID antibodies. We know that there are some lipids in it, which are fats. Certain medications they dissolve in water, some dissolve in fat. So there's some lipids that are in the vaccine. The one thing that's also in there is a polyethylene glycol compound. There's many different polyethylene glycol compounds in the world of pharmacy, but something that you can equate it to is honestly Miralax that we give our residents all the time. There's a little bit of a difference because when you take it orally, it doesn't get absorbed in your gut, then we're injecting it. So the route of administration is a little bit different, but these are compounds that we're very familiar with and we encounter in our everyday lives. The next one would be potassium chloride. So that's what's in bananas. That's what's in potassium supplements. Those are things we take every day. The next thing would be potassium phosphate. These are in things like dairy products. The next thing would be sodium chloride, which we're all very familiar with. It's table salt. It's normal saline. It's things of that nature. There's something called sodium phosphate dihydrate, which sounds very scary, but it's in cream of wheat. So again, something that we encounter in our everyday lives. And then lastly, there's some sucrose, which is just simply sugar. So, know your specific allergies, but just having a lot of allergies in general or different types of, normal everyday allergies is definitely not a contraindication to getting this vaccine. And if you're really worried, I did speak to Tammy before the call, and we don't have anyone that's gotten the vaccine at Legacy that has had this anaphylactic type reaction. Everyone has, gotten the vaccine safely. PharmScript, who is our pharmacy provider who will be administering the vaccines, do have those medications for allergic reactions on hand. So rest assured, if something were to happen, we have those medications on hand. They can be administered rapidly. So no worries there. Just trying to see if I have anything else that written down that's really a fun fact. Nope, I'm good. So like Dr. Balaji said, if you were to be one of those 11 in a million people who did have an anaphylactic reaction, obviously you're allergic to this vaccine and its components and you wouldn't get that second dose. But unless you're allergic to anything that I specifically just mentioned, you should be perfectly safe to receive the vaccine.
That's great, Kaylee. Thank you so much for going through that list of ingredients. I know it can sound a little daunting to some of us sometimes, but I think that breakdown really helped a lot.
Thank you.
Dr. Balaji, the next question is for you. Why do people feel mild illness after getting the vaccine? Does that mean that they contracted COVID-19?
Actually, the short answer is no. This vaccine, like Dr. Lash had said before, is a very new kind of vaccine. It's a mRNA vaccine. There is no component of the virus in the vaccine, either alive or attenuated, which is dead. So there's no component of the virus in the vaccine at all. So the reactions we see in terms of myalgia or fever or nausea or a headache is a reaction because of our immune response, which is a good thing. We are showing an immune response where we are making more antibodies that would work against the virus from infecting us. So the effects we see is purely because of that. There is no component of the virus in the vaccine, be it alive or attenuated. So it's a very safe vaccine from that perspective. So the effects we see, the headache or the myalgia or the fever are pure response from our body, which is
Great.
you
Thank
know.
you.
Also, I just wanted to touch on one point before. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
You know,
please.
from everybody asking me, you know, several of our staff, and being the heroes they've been, have contracted the virus. And one common question several of my patients ask me, you know, I already had the COVID. Should I get it? They should not get it while they have the symptoms. While they are suffering the COVID, they should not be getting it. But once they have finished that period, which is usually 14 days from the time they contracted it, they should get the vaccine. Sorry, and I just wanted to interject that point.
No, that's actually awesome timing, Dr. Balaji, because that leads us into our final question, which I'll pose to Dr. Lash. Dr. Lash, why do I need the vaccine if I've already had COVID-19?
That's a question that comes up a lot, as Dr. Balaji was just saying. What happens when we're infected by the natural illness of COVID-19 or any other infection? Our body produces a variety of different antibodies. Some of these antibodies are protective, some of them are not, and the amount and type of antibodies can be very specific to the given individual. With the COVID vaccine, the antibody production is targeted to a particularly vulnerable part of the virus, and it's a portion of the virus which does not easily change with mutation over time. We've all heard about the mutations that everyone's worried about in COVID. The protein spike portion of the virus that the vaccine is targeted on is not an area that's easy to get around with mutation. So with the vaccine, we're targeting a very effective and very persistent area of the vaccine, giving us a much better likelihood of having long-term and effective immunity than we would have with the natural immunity that comes from the infection. So that's why the recommendation is there for all of us to get this, so that we can protect ourselves, our families, and our patients in the most effective manner possible.
That's great. Absolutely, Dr. Lash. I think that was a great point to end on. I would like to thank all of our panelists again for all of this great information that they were able to share today. Again, as a reminder, if you have any specific questions about your ability to get the COVID-19 vaccine, please contact your primary care physician. Also, as a reminder, each of our Legacy Health Services facilities will be hosting 3 vaccination clinics. You are able to get the first round vaccine at either the first or second round clinic. Please know that if you missed your first or second round clinic at your building, you can still be vaccinated. Please reach out to your director of nursing, and we will put you in contact with a sister facility who has an upcoming clinic. We really want to make this available to everybody who wants to be vaccinated. And in closing, I just wanted to thank everyone for being the most powerful people ever to those we serve. And thank you so much for doing your part in the fight against COVID-19.
Thank you, Christine. That was wonderful.
All right, thanks. Have a good day, everybody.